Welcome back to the Stories That Shape Us. I'm your host, Brock Doty, and every week we sit down with someone whose story of resilience, transformation, and purpose reminds us that the hardest moments often shape the most powerful futures. Today is not only bringing deep insight and experience, it's also bringing a making of podcast history. Dr. Tharaka Gunarathne is my very first international guest, joining us all the way from Aberdeen, Scotland in the United Kingdom. And I am truly honored to be sitting down with him today. Dr. T is a psychiatrist who made the bold leap from the clinical world to the commercial space, and he operates at the intersection of high-performance psychology, cohesion, cognitive bias, and memory training. He is a 3-time TEDx speaker, a psychiatrist featured on Channel 4, BBC, The Telegraph, and is appearing on popular Scottish television shows such as Mind Expert, Can I Improve My Memory, and Scared of the Dark. Dr. T is also an international speaker known for turning complex brain science into practical strategies that drive clarity and change. He believes that you can manage your mind, you can manage your life. And that belief is the core of the work that he does with the individuals and the organizations around the globe. But behind the expertise is a powerful personal story, one that is marked by the tragic loss of his sister, a moment that shattered his world and sparked a new calling rooted in passion and purpose. So in this episode, we explore Dr. T's early years, his time of clinical psychiatry, the pivotal shift into commercial work, and the emotional journey that continues to shape his mission today. We talk science, faith, grief, growth, and the kind of transformation that doesn't come from success, but comes from heartbreak. So let's get into it. Dr. T, welcome to the Stories That Shape Us. I've been truly looking forward to this conversation, and I start by saying thank you.
Brock, bless you. Thank you so much. It's really great to be here. It's so funny at the beginning when you were introducing my name, Dr. Tharaka Gunarathne, number one. It sounds like you have practiced that a million times. Have you?
Yeah.
Well, it was spot on. You probably said it better than I would say it myself. And then the second thing that I found funny was that I thought you were going to say, all the way from Sri Lanka or something like that with a name like that. But no, it's the United Kingdom, which is true. That is where I am. Yeah, Scotland, United Kingdom. Aberdeen, actually, is the city I'm in. Have you been over to the UK yet?
Dude, I haven't been out of the country besides Mexico. So I'm not very cultural traveled. I can travel in the United States. I think I have 31 states under my belt. But no, I haven't outside of the United States. It's on my bucket list though.
Yeah, not yet. You're still to do that. And I love the United States. I love visiting. Mexico, I haven't been. My wife, I know, would definitely like to holiday there. We should take the kids there. How was Mexico for you?
I was there for a wedding and it was absolutely beautiful. We had
Oh,
an
really?
all-inclusive resort
Yeah.
and it was awesome.
Oh, superb. Well, yeah, thank you for having me. It's great.
Hey, absolutely. It means a lot that you've just taken the time to join us all the way from Scotland. I'm honored to have you here today. But I was thinking, as I was kind of getting ready to start this episode, before we even hit the record and started recording today, I was thinking back, we had a 45-minute phone call, and it just felt like we were reconnecting with an old friend, and it was one of those rare conversations that just flows, that's full of depth, honesty, and mutual curiosity. And by the end of it, I knew that this episode was going to be something special. So let's kick it off.
No, you're right. And the honesty and the openness, I chime with you on that one, Brock. But to your credit, I think you started that. And it's actually evidence-based. When we share something about ourselves that would be considered to be a personal detail or something slightly vulnerable, you were telling me about your story, where you came from. And that's shown to help increase brain oxytocin in the hearer. And oxytocin is a signal that's sent from the hypothalamic pituitary area of the brain when we feel like we're in, a trusting or connecting sort of moment. And that often increases the other person's sharing or vulnerability in conversation. So, look, I think you opened up that door.
Like I said, Dr. T, after our first conversation, it felt like we had known each other for years, right?
Mm-hmm.
There was such an immediate connection. But for
Mm-hmm.
those that are just getting to know you, how would you describe the man that you are today?
Oh wow. Okay, so that's a deeper framed question, isn't it? Then give us an introduction about yourself. You know, if you did say give us an introduction about yourself, typically I would say something like, my name is Tharaka. I'm 42 years old. My wife's a GP. She's from Inverness in Scotland, and we met in medical school. We have 3 kids. I became a doctor 20 years ago. I specialized in medicine of the mind, making me a consultant level psychiatrist here in the UK. And after a few interesting twists and turns, I find myself moving not so much in the clinical world with psychiatry, but now the commercial world, trying to be a delivery guy. When I mean delivery guys, a bringer of good gifts and good news to people in the working world, helping them upgrade their mind so they can upgrade their life. I am a believer in when you renew your mind, you can renew your life. You can be transformed, and so yeah, I bring that message to the world. But yeah, look, I like to have fun. Joy is very important to me. I am a Bible believing Christian. I am a student. I'm learning, so I don't profess to be an expert. I just think that that takes the pressure off a little bit. And yeah, I like pizza. Keep fit.
Does
Um,
pineapple go on pizza in Scotland?
yeah, they do that. They call it the Hawaiian over here. Is that what they call it over
Yeah,
in the
that's what we
States?
call Hawaiian, or they call it Canadian bacon and pineapple. But
Oh, I've never heard that before.
there's
That's
a big
interesting.
debate in the States that pineapple doesn't go on pizza, and I'm a firm believer that it does. And so we're gonna get along just fine.
Yeah, 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 yeah. A lot of the quote unquote Hawaiian pizzas I've had over here have almost a bitterness in the pineapple, which throws me a little bit. I don't know if I'm really tasting that from imagining it, but yeah, I do like pizza. Yeah, just chilling out. I'm not one of those people that likes to be busy. When you and I were chatting on the phone, you would often reframe the word busy into productive. I heard you say that. Why do you do that, by the way? Because I think that's on purpose.
I have a manager during my day job that doesn't like the word busy because
Yeah.
that he attributes it to busy work. Like you're just pushing a pencil to pass the time rather than being productive. You're making use of yourself.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Yeah. Isn't that right? We're not called to be busy, we're called to be effective. And it's a really good distinction to make. I often say busyness is not a badge of honor because we could often live in cultures, be that in our working life or even in our personal life, whereby we feel more valid, we feel more like we count or we're qualified if we are busy, which often means that we are doing lots of energetic work over continuous periods of time. But is that the result, or is effectiveness the result? So yeah, I'm not addicted to busyness, that's for sure.
No, me either.
Some
Me
people
either.
are though, and they feel guilty when they're not overworked and busy. I've worked in environments like that.
I come from a small town in the United States. I don't know if you know where Montana is. It's one of those border states up by Canada, so northern United States. And so just small town lifestyles, just kind of laid back, a little bit more go with the flow. There's one stoplight in that town, so it's super small.
Oh, right.
And now I live in Dallas, Texas, and it's the complete opposite. Everybody's go, go, go constantly. And
For
so,
real, you felt that.
yeah, I eventually want to get back to the small town living when I have a family. But I love
Yes.
the go, go, go as a bachelor, to be honest with you.
So what does that mean? I mean, I visited Dallas once last year, actually. Actually, because of that visit and some of the connections that you share and I share that overlap, that's probably contributed to us bumping into each other as well. But I loved it, and I loved the people. I loved the mindset, Brock. I was surrounded by some big believing people that believed in more, and that that tomorrow could be better, and like optimistic growth mindset stuff, which I found really inspiring. When I came back to Scotland, I was like, oh my goodness! I said to my wife, like, Isla, like this. I met some incredible people who just like believe for bigger, better. I met this young boy that wrote a book when he was 16, and da da da. It's just very encouraging for me.
Everything's bigger in Texas. I don't know if you've heard that saying, but
I've not
everything's
heard
bigger
that.
in Texas.
I've no. Yeah, okay, fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah.
So yeah, let's switch gears a little bit. You've built this incredible path that blends neuroscience, performance, and purpose. But take me back to what life was growing up in Scotland like. I've never been, and so just take me back to that. And were there any early moments or influences that sparked your curiosity in the mind?
So, my parents are from Sri Lanka and they emigrated to the UK in the late 70s, and I was born in the early 80s. So, for the first 5 years of my life, we lived in England, and my dad got a job as a lecturer up here in Aberdeen in Scotland, and that's why we relocated. So, we as a family of four, my mum, dad, and my little sister, who was newly born at the time, we all relocated up to Aberdeen in Scotland, which is a granite city, actually, Brock. The city is known for its granite and has a reputation of having been Europe's oil capital for a long period of time as well. And so I grew up in a village called Portlethen, a small place, maybe small town, not dissimilar to maybe some of your experiences growing up. And yeah, I was the only Sri Lankan boy growing up in 1980s Portlethen. And as my Asian parents were, do you know what profession they told me I must get into? Can you guess? Son, you must be a
I have no idea.
oh, doctor. It's doctor. I can't tell if you're pretending that you don't know that that's the answer. All
No,
right. Okay.
I'm very, so my background, there's a lot of white people. And so
Yeah.
I don't really
Yeah.
know the stereotypes. I'm starting to learn now that I'm in a bigger city with a melting pot, but yeah, I was surrounded by mostly white people in Montana.
Yes, that makes sense, isn't that? Like, the differences in cultural norms or typical patterns. And yeah, it's not atypical for Asian parents to want their kids to be doctors or technical professions, engineers, lawyers, things like that. Anyway, I didn't really want to be a doctor. It's just following what I was being told to do. And so studying for exams was tough, but had to be done. And uh, got straight A's and got into medical school here in the UK in Aberdeen, actually. So I didn't have far to travel. I did medicine in undergraduate, so in medical school, and found that psychiatry was the thing that I got the most. I kind of got people, communication, things like that. And also, I found it was a place where I could slow down and take more time with patients and be compassionate. I felt like it was a place where you could exercise compassion in a very kind of typical sense, sitting down, listening to someone, giving them empathy, as well as figuring out their state of health and how you could help improve that.
Is that what drew you to the field of psychiatry?
Yeah, there have been mental health challenges in my family growing up. And so I kind of became a practical psychologist as well, like learning how important it was to watch what you say and having a grid for emotional vocabulary and understanding a bit more about the human mind, maybe than you would do normally because of some of the things that I was surrounded by in the family. I felt maybe the draw was that I was competent. It was like this was easier than the other specialties for me personally.
I know you said that you were kind of forced into it. It's kind of what you were told to do.
Yeah.
But was there a moment where it clicked and you knew that this is the work that I was truly meant to do all along?
What a great question. And I like how this is an honest podcast. The short answer is never. Never one day in my entire career did I feel that ever. And I felt stuck. I felt stuck because I would describe myself. I felt like I was a square peg being forced through a triangular hole, and with a great amount of force, effort, pain, and strife, I could do it. But it was never really like the perfect values fit for me. I'm quite creative. I like to do things outside the box, and I suppose quite rightly, medicine's a very prescriptive specialty. You figure out what's going on and you follow guidelines to make that better. And now I feel like I'm in a world where I get to do a bit of both. I use the guidelines of science, but I'm also very creative in the way I bring that to people. So that really sort of lights me up, but also I think lights other people up as well because it's interesting and fun.
Yeah, I think you just hit on my next point.
Oh
Uh,
yeah.
and that's when you felt called to step away from traditional clinical psychiatry. And obviously, that's a big pivot. So, what was stirring in you at the time that made you feel like it was time for a new direction?
I've wanted to change direction for a long time. And there was a time where I felt like, do you know what? I think I might actually go into traditional ministry in the church. I felt like I would be like a Sunday service pastor, and um, I was really hoping that that would be my alternative and my exit from the profession. But it turned out not to go that way. I didn't plan it.
Life never goes as
Yeah, what an interesting thing to say. Life never goes as planned. Yeah. Is that true?
because
Does life
I know
never?
I've had it all planned out, and God just laughs at me and he
Yeah.
goes, ha ha ha.
Do you know what? You have to be able to pivot. You have to be able. Do you know, like lightning? You'll never find a straight bolt of lightning anywhere. It's always jagged. And the reason that lightning is always jagged and never straight is because the air density that the charge travels through is always changing. So pockets of air are different throughout that cloud to ground journey. And so what happens is the charge that travels at a fraction of a fraction of a fraction of a second travels a bit, hits a different density of air, gathers together, pivots and looks for the next path of least resistance, travels that bit, then pivots and looks for the next path of least resistance, and so on and so on and so on. And it just happens almost instantaneously. And for me, I feel like that's a good metaphor. We've got to find ways to move like lightning. And you might have a plan. The journey is to go from cloud to ground or from point A to the promised land. But you might have to sort of take a bit of a detour or pivot and shift because obstacles come your way. And yeah, I think that's interesting.
That is a great analogy, Dr. T, because life can be all planned out, but growth is never a straight line. It's going to look like a lightning bolt. And so I think that's awesome.
Well,
And
you make a good point. Yeah, even if you look at a growth chart, if you look at a pediatric growth chart, the line isn't even straight. The line's got inflection points in it because different things happen in different seasons, right? And the rates of growth change, and then you might grow horizontally for a bit and then vertically, or you might put on more muscle, or your fat distribution changes. So I think you're right. Like very literally, growth is not linear, right? I think sometimes we want it to be. The human mind often looks for certainty. It looks for predictability, and when we have more frame of reference about what we're in, what season of time we're in, what's going on, then we can put our focus and attention on the things and the decisions that we, really want to put our focus on. But what also happens is that the burglar alarm system in the brain, the amygdala, the limbic brain, uh, goes on overdrive when uncertainty is too high. And it's so interesting that, our remedy to uncertainty is to try and take as much control as possible and to be able to predict. And I'm not saying that making plans is a bad thing. I think it's a good thing. I think it's a good thing to plan, to make predictions, to hypothesize. There's bits of our brain that can do that. But at the same time, we need patience, don't we? We need to be able to be patient in the moment. We need to be able to find comfort in the moment. We need to be able to be flexible as well.
I think you need to have a purpose, though, too.
Yeah, isn't that right? When we have a sense of purpose, we have a whole bunch of physical benefits, mental health benefits from having a sense of purpose. It's good for our mental health to have a sense of purpose. In fact, when people feel like their purpose has come to an end, we can see a spike. And in health problems as well. Have you heard about people taking ill after they retire from their job because their role was their identity, right? And we understand that. I'm not knocking why that happens, but when everything that we live for, a sense of who we are as individuals comes from that which we do, from our performance in our works, then when you take that away, then what we're left with is a kind of scary void, and that can be quite demoralizing for a person mentally and physically. So purpose is really important. You're right.
I know when you and I talk, sometimes purpose is born not just from inspiration, but from something much heavier. And I know for you, that was the loss of your sister.
Yeah, you're
And
right.
was that a moment that shifted everything? And if you're comfortable, can you kind of take us into that season of your life?
Yeah. So my younger sister was a medical student um, in a place called Leeds in England, and she took ill with leukemia actually, and she uh, got worse in 2013, and she passed away in December of 2013. But she had a very inspiring faith. She wore this ring. I think it was a ring that said "True Love Waits," kind of um, ring that she wore. Um, Kind of like, oh, I'm waiting to meet my maker. I'm waiting to meet the Lord. I'm waiting to meet Jesus. She just had a piece about her departing from the world and going to heaven. That's she talked about that a lot. But when she passed away, everyone in the room that was there burst into tears, um, and I think I felt as sad, but I didn't cry. I think I was holding the tears back or something, or I was trying to find a way to keep composed. And I just pulled out a Bible and started reading out aloud a chapter from, I think, the book of Ephesians, chapter 2, maybe it was. And it was just a kind of like pivoting moment. There was a lot of pain. There was a lot of power at work in that moment emotionally. My wife and I actually had just became very spiritually hungry. Very clear that we didn't have all the answers, and we start to see the fragility of life as well. Death is something you have to deal with as a doctor, um, and when it happens quite close to home, it shifts the way you think. And I think maybe in a nutshell, Brock, I felt like Brock, the reason I'm finding it hard to put into words right now is because I think this is just sums up what that feeling was like back then. Is like it's quite difficult to describe. But it was more of a kind of okay, this is grief, this is bereavement, this is worldview changing, what matters in life. Certainly, my emails in my inbox that usually bother me in my mind didn't matter in that moment. All that kind of stuff just sort of dropped. So I think it was just I call it post traumatic growth.
Talk to me about that.
Well, you can go through a tough time and it can leave a footprint on your life. And that's and that's painful, and often we need support for that. That can be through friends and family and lifestyle changes, but sometimes through professional help as well and spiritual help. Uh, but there is another alternative to post-traumatic stress and it escalating to the point that it's a post-traumatic stress disorder, and that is post-traumatic growth. And really what I mean by that is that when you go through a fork in the road, proverbially, when you go through a tough time in life, you find purpose in the pain. There are lots of different discussions to be had about how does one do that in a healthy way, because sometimes we shelve the grief, we sublime the grief into energy to go do something, which in a way, deep down, is your attempt to not only stabilize yourself, but make it right or get your healing through the actions that you're taking, right? Again, it doesn't mean that it's not serving people or making the world a better place, but I'm just saying there are different unconscious and spiritual drivers, psychological drivers of our actions after a tough time. But yeah, you can go through a tough time, you can go through an illness, and then you start a charity to help with that illness, or someone in your family has a road traffic accident, and then you start campaigning for a better legislation on road safety or access to alcohol before you go driving, things like that. And so there are ways to find purpose in the pain. If you can find purpose in the pain, then suddenly you can be a servant to other people because of your experience. And that in itself can be very helpful and be part of a journey of healing, actually.
That's truly powerful. It's definitely just shifted my perspective because you just explained how you've taken that heartbreak and built something incredibly impactful from it. Since making that shift in 2013, what are some of the milestones or moments that you are most proud of in your life?
From a professional point of view, uh, I started to see opportunities open up where I could share my sense of purpose with the world. And that came through a TED talk, actually, believe it or not. I got this opportunity to do TED talk, and I was like, should I do this? Should I not do this? I was kind of like, God, I'm not really sure I should do this because I feel like I'm getting really like obsessed with this opportunity. Give me a sign, sort of thing. And when I went into work the next day, a psychologist began her presentation with an optical illusion, and she asked everyone in the room, doctors, nurses, therapists, everyone, look at this wall which had a drawing on it of dots, really, and then close your eyes and tilt your head back and see what you can see in your mind. And everyone in the room had a crystal clear picture of the face of Jesus in their minds because of this optical illusion. And that never happens in my workplace. It just never happens. It's never happened. I've been there for a long time. And so for me, it felt like a burning bush. What I mean by that is it's something unusual that doesn't happen every day, that when you lean in, you go, oh, this isn't probably just an accident or a happenstance, but it feels like God could be behind this. So I took that to be my sign. I did the TED talk. I had the opportunity to deliver a talk of encouragement and big thinking and sort of like principles for growth mindset, and then that opened the door to bringing my message into a commercial world.
You give yourself some credit. You've spoken on some amazing stages, TED
Yeah,
Talks,
right. Yeah,
major
right.
conferences,
Yeah.
television. What's that been
Hmm.
like for you?
Yeah, I forgot about that. Yeah, yeah, you're right. Um, Thank you for reminding me. Yeah, that is a really great. Yeah, is TV a big? Is TV a big thing in the US at the moment, or is it more social media or radio, or
I
what are the
I
influences?
personally don't watch a lot of television just because
Yeah,
I
yeah,
don't have time. I like watching sports, but I'm not gonna like watch sitcoms or like reality TV shows or anything like that. What's big for us though is like streaming. So like Netflix, Hulu,
uh,
Amazon Prime. A lot of people are doing that rather than television.
yeah, yeah. I'm with you. I'm with you, and yeah, a lot. That's where the eyeballs are and the attention, right, on demand.
Is it the
Having
same in the United Kingdom?
Yeah, it is. That's what the trends are at the moment, apart from things like live sport and, say, for example, royal weddings, events, things like that. But I would say that still, television is the only place in media that not everyone has access to. So you have to like cut a whole bunch of credentials and check boxes and have talent. You can't, on social media, you make yourself an account and you can film yourself and bang, you're on stage. But the gateway into mainstream media is still very high bar, and it is lovely to be accepted into the British media space as a contributor. So I act as a mental health expert and talk into people's daily lives, like relationships and body language and improving your memory and things like that. So I do that on daytime TV, but I've done a few kind of reality celebrity shows, and you've alluded to one of them, Scared of the Dark, and also improving memory. So yeah, it's interesting.
Do you feel a different kind of responsibility when you speak on those stages rather than just you and I speaking today?
Yeah, like you got to be so careful with your words. But I think I heard Bill Johnson say this: if you watch what you think, you don't have to watch what you say. And so your words are often a byproduct of your thought life. I say often, not always, but they're, and so a lot of the practice, the thoughts that you choose to have and the thoughts that you choose to reject or not go down the line. I'm really quite like into that. I think it's really important to not give the keys of your mind to your enemy. I take it very seriously. I pray every single time before I'm on camera because I want to make it not about me. I want to make it about the people I want to serve. I kind of want to make myself invisible. I don't need to be. I just need them to receive the value so they can experience some kind of strength to strength or glory to glory or some kind of growth, right? So it's really important to watch what you say. And I've had some interesting experiences, like late night TV, Brock, is an interesting one because everyone around you, they're letting their hair down and it's kind of, there's more comedy and it's less serious. But like, it's so important to me that I stay true to my core values. And yeah,
Have you ever heard the acronym GIGO? So it can mean
GIGO.
one of two things. It can mean good in, good out, or it can mean garbage in, garbage out. So you have to protect your eye gate, you have to protect your ear gate, because if you're listening to, I don't know, I just instantly thought of a smut book, 50 Shades of Grey, compared to listening to something uplifting, you're obviously going to be thinking more about sex, drugs, and rock and roll rather than purpose driven impact thoughts. And so you have to protect your ear gate, but you're also your eye gate. So if you're the type of guy that's scrolling on social media and there's violence, I know sometimes if I'm on Twitter, I'll get violence of stuff, whether it be ISIS be hitting somebody or just people fighting. And I don't subscribe to any of that, but they put it in front of your face. And so if you have that, it's going to go into your conscious mind, and that's how you're going to start thinking, and that's how you're going to be wired. And so good in, good out. So I say just fill yourself with all the good, and so you can project good onto the world.
Yeah, that's a really good point. And uh our brains are learning machines. They're neuroplastic, and we can learn on purpose intentionally and also learn accidentally. And so we take that's why advertising works. We might not be paying attention to it, but it's having an impact on us. It's having an influence on us, right? So I think you're absolutely right. What am I exposing my mind to? What are the conversations I'm exposing myself to? Who are the people I'm surrounding myself with? These are all important questions because what we are surrounded by has an impact on how we think, make decisions, and take actions.
Dr. T, one thing that I admire about you and your work is how you take complex neuroscience and make it accessible and practical for everyday people like us that didn't study the brain like you did. And so, how did you end up developing that skill, and why do you think that that's important to you to speak to your audience?
Sure. So I have a very clear, simple answer on this, and that is that when I went to medical school, I found it really hard to pay attention in lectures. And I would cheat myself up and go, right, for this next 55 minutes, I am going to pay attention to this next lecture. And then the lights would dim, and then it would be, oh my goodness, I'm finding this really hard to engage with. I've already checked out. We're 30 seconds in, and that's the end of that. I'm going to have to study this lecture at home on my own. But I was like, but you know what? Like once every so often, you got a really engaging speaker. And I just thought, you know what? If this was communicated to me in a way that I would understand, I'm sure I would get it. I would get it, but I'm not. And I just thought, I want to speak to medical students in a way that I would like to have been spoken to. So I just speak in like really like basic, simple speak in a way that they'll get it. I'll talk about modern day parables. I'll talk about, like when there is a busy X junction and you've got a traffic warden that's trying to funnel lots of different things at the same time. That's like your prefrontal cortex. But in ADHD, that bit's gone to sleep. But then, medication is a little bit like a cup of coffee that wakes the traffic warden up again, and then they're redirecting all the traffic again. And it's just kind of like, oh, I would have got that if I was told that. Yeah, if you want to teach, if you want to impart wisdom in a way that makes a difference to someone else's life, they've got to be able to get it. They've got to be able to understand it. And some of that's about, well, speaking their language.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think that has slingshotted you forward in the success of working with big teams, big name leaders, global Fortune 500 organizations. What are some of the biggest mental, emotional roadblocks that you see people running into today?
Today, It is uncertainty in change. Let's face it, in some ways, change is the only constant. We were talking about this. We love to be in control and be able to predict. But for a number of reasons, the world that we are in almost now feels more volatile and fluctuant than ever before. Um, that's how it feels. I'm not saying it is like that. But then the knock on impact of feeling like, oh my goodness, there's so much change, is that it leads to um, a cascade of certain human emotions. I call them the four Fs: more fatigue from change, fear about the unknown. That's the second F. The third F is frustration. I want it this way, but I can't. I have to do it that way. And the final one is fragmentation, when you start to sort of pull away from your sense of engagement with the job, the role, or even the team. So you get siloing and splitting. But the point here is that one of the biggest roadblocks I'm seeing is navigating uncertainty and change. And the other one is just full blown busyness and the kind of just like, oh, I'm obviously more effective if I'm working harder, which is actually on a number of neuroeconomic levels not what the data shows. What the data shows is that resilience is about how you charge up, not how many punches in the face you can take. Resilience is about how you rest more than how hard you work. You'd never come to work without charging your mobile phone the night before, or at least the 2 days before. You just don't not charge your phone, right? Why do we do that with our brain and our body? Not recharge.
That's silly.
Right. I mean, do you ever go, oh, do you know what? My phone's got 5%. I don't think I'll put it on charge. I'll just go to sleep. I mean, we just hardly ever do that. We're kind of like, I need to charge my phone up. I'll put it on charge. But we need to do that a bit more with ourselves. So I would say those are two biggies.
Do you think that on the opposite side of things, do you think you can overcharge yourself? Do you think you can rest so much that you don't have the productivity that go along with it?
Yeah, yeah. There's something called the Yerkes-Dodson curve, which is an upside down U-shaped curve, which is essentially an N-shaped curve, right? Like it's a hill. There's an upslope, there's a peak, and then there's a down. And if you imagine the bottom axis, that's stress or psychological demand, and the vertical axis is performance. So the idea here is that if there is absolutely no psychological necessity on a human being, I don't need to do this, there's absolutely no need, then human performance level is going to be low. But then as you start to crank up the psychological necessity, we got to get this done. We got to get this over the line. We got to do this for our patients. We got to do this for our clients. We got to do this so I get paid or whatever. When the cycle, I got to win this gold medal for my country in this 100-meter sprint. Like when the psychological necessity has been cranked up, then we see our ability to drive higher performance. However, if you overstress a human being, if you make them overly anxious, if you make them overly like, you know what, like if you mess up, then the world is going to come to an end. It's going to be all your fault. Can you imagine that? Like when we overstress ourselves out, we come down the curve. And actually, if we experience that for too long periods of time, that toxic stress that goes on and on and on, we see a decrease in human performance. So, to answer your question, Brock, yeah, you're absolutely right. There's a sweet spot. There's an optimum engine temperature. It's going to be different for different people. But just by knowing that, allows you to take back a little bit of a helicopter view on where am I on that curve and when do I need to recharge and when am I demotivating myself to the point that I don't even feel like brushing my teeth, washing my face, and putting on socks.
Wow, that makes you
Do you know?
think.
Yeah, do you know what I mean?
hmm hmm I know some people, like, if they don't have any ambition, but then they finally get asked to do something, they don't have the accountability. They're not going to do it. They're going to make
Mm.
excuses to avoid it.
Mhm.
And do you find that to be true?
Yeah, and you know what we're almost starting to tip into is the cultural differences in transgenerational workplaces. So we got different sort of microcultures within the workplace based on what you grew up with and what the norms were in society when you had tech and when you didn't have tech. And so there are going to be differences that way in terms of um, that. The younger generation is better at thinking about what's fair and what's right and how do we make this equitable for me as well. And I think that the older generation have a different uh, lens from their experience. So when you combine these two good lenses together, they don't always see like in a match. So or align as well. And so there's some work and understanding where people are coming from to be done around that. It's interesting in terms of accountability, in terms of motivation. Here, at least in primary school children in the UK, I've seen some at least unpublished trends on how school children score lower on their personal initiative. They're happy to jump through the hoops. You tell them, right, this is the homework, get it done. You've got a test, get it done. But when it's like, you've got the weekend off now, go and have fun. It's like, oh, I'm bored. What do I do? I'm bored. I'm bored. Like, it's summer holidays. Oh, I'm so bored. I'm allowed to do anything, but I can't, there's nothing to do in this world, right? And so I wonder if some of that is about when we're overtrained to jump through hoops, then we become responsive to that. But when it comes to, why don't you create something? Why don't you play? Why don't you dig a hole in the garden and bury a time capsule in there or whatever? Like the stuff that we do that's very tactile, that requires a bit of creativity and initiative. It's hard work to crank that engine sometimes, but I do try with my kids to encourage that. But I think that is a factor as well to consider, this kind of initiative. But I'll say this, the same psychological levers that you can pull in someone's mind 30 years ago, 50 years ago, are the same ones today. The three major drivers of workplace motivation are autonomy. I have a feeling that like I'm given a bit of free rein to get the work done. Mastery, I feel like I'm growing. And purpose, there's that word again in our conversation. What I do matters. It's not just ticking a box. It's not just picking up the phone. Yeah, that old adage that I really love, that one about NASA. When you ask a cleaner at NASA, what do they do for a living? They say, I'm here to help put a man on the moon. That, I think, speaks volumes about being engaged with the emotional driver of an organization or business, which is purpose. So that is still how we motivate people in technical workplaces: autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
That's absolutely powerful. You were talking about the kids in primary school. I feel like school today is an old school system because I think it's teaching us to be an employee rather than it's being an individual ideological thinker. Because so many times it's sit down, shut up, do your work. And I don't know about in the United Kingdom, but the United States has this model all throughout every state. No matter what state you go to, it's go to school, get good grades, get a good job. It's not teaching you to be an independent thinker. And so I think they're just trying to make cookie cutter employees. And I think that's kind of starting to become a downfall within our society in the United States. I don't know about how you guys are in Scotland, but push is coming to shove and more people are waking up and realizing that they have more to offer than being an employee, and they want to do something for themselves rather than being told what to do.
Yeah. And I often think about, even for my kids, they're aged between 13 and 9, like the world of work, or the world full stop, is going to be quite different when they're 17, 18, 19, particularly with AI, use of tech, and therefore what that means for workplaces. And I don't know if they're being prepared by the schooling system for that kind of future reality. But it's something I want to do with them. So this summer, for example, Brock, you might like this. My kids and I are going to run a summer school, a coaching school for other kids to help improve their memory, focus, attention, and healthy study habits.
I love
So,
that.
yeah, so these worked for me when I was a kid. And now, because I have an understanding of the developing brain, and I've done this stuff. It's called the straight A's brain. That's what the summer school's going to be called. Even when I had to study for something as challenging as medicine and not even absolutely love it, I would felt forced to do it. My study techniques that I learned helped me get straight A's. Wouldn't it be nice if I could help a whole bunch of kids learn some techniques that will help them be super learners, but also reduce the stress around learning and the worry around learning, and also involve my kids in the process, train them and let them get confident in being servants to other people. So, yeah, I just want to help them kind of think outside the box. Does everyone in the world need to be an entrepreneur? I don't know if everyone needs to be a capital E entrepreneur. I'm pretty sure they don't, because I think we need people who are stable table. They know how to check in and crank out standards that are set already. But could we all do with a bit more creative muscle mastery of the mind? Probably.
Yeah, I think we're starting to be transition into an information aged society, but school is a traditional society, traditional model. And so I don't think it's adapting with the times because
Mm.
my grandparents learned the same way I learned, and my kids are probably going to learn the same way that I learned. And
Mm.
so why aren't we adapting with the times? Why are we still sitting in a classroom listening to a teacher speak? Like,
There's this question of, are there some human skills that we should still practice that aren't super practically applicable? Here's an example. When I was in school, high school, so academy here in the UK in the 90s, we had to do a no calculator maths test. So it was a maths test where we weren't allowed to use a calculator, and we were told, you're not going to be able to just have a calculator anytime you want. You can't just be standing in a shop with a calculator in your pocket. So lo and behold, all of us have a calculator in our pocket right now. And so it's like I would extrapolate the same principle, the use of generative AI and then agentic AI when that becomes more mainstream. How do we learn for a world that will readily have that? Is it nice that I still know how to add and subtract in my head? Yeah, I think it is. But there's an important part about adapting to the times that I'm in. It's an interesting one to think about.
are they still teaching long division?
They do. And my daughter and I almost had a fight about this because she was getting me to help her with her homework. And I, of course, you need to get into a DeLorean and go back to when I was in school to actually validate my technique, right? And she's doing something new that I've never heard about. And then she and I are getting into a dad-daughter sort of stramash going, I don't understand you. No, I don't understand you. Dad, you're just wrong. Ah.
But let
So
me ask you
yeah.
this, Dr. T, when's the last time you used long division in your everyday life?
I'm not sure I can do long division. I think I must have skipped that. Sk-
I must have fallen asleep during the lecture. No,
And I still got through.
I am the same way. I don't know if I could do it. I could get started, but I don't know how to finish it. And so it's just a lost skill. Like I don't even know why we need to learn it personally. But
That's why
that's beside the point.
that's why it's called long division. It takes so long. You just don't ever know how to finish the sum. It's like help. And when I get my daughter involved, then that's just an even longer conversation.
Yeah. Well, hey, I just want to wrap up here. When you look at everything that you're doing today, from the corporate world to keynote speaking, what's next for you? What upcoming projects or ideas are you excited about that you can share with us?
Yeah, I want to build a scalable and reliable income stream so that I can be more freed up to be a contributor in other ways. It's starting to happen. I'm able to deliver give back type talks and things like that for schools, and I'd love to do more work in charity and ministry, church ministry. That's that sort of arm. I'd love to create a bit of a foundation to do that. So, and at the same time, produce more reliable and scalable services to people out there. Because at the moment, as a keynote speaker, you're going from one delivery to another, to another, to another. You're in one place at one time. I want to be able to share the impact with more people at the same time. So I'm going to be doing some like scaled out keynote speaking, starting a digital product called 12x Impact, which is keynotes for technically an unlimited amount of organizations that can all beam into this one stream. So they get premium quality input for outstandingly outrageous value, which I don't know I've ever seen done before. So really excited on that. I want to link up more with the United States. I want to do more. I want to go visit in Texas, bring my wife along as well. We travel together. That would be good. So a few
You're
things like
always
that.
welcome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. So, Dr. T, before I wrap up, I just want to give you the floor. You've shared so much perspective over this last hour. Is there anything else on your heart that you'd like to leave with the listeners? Maybe something about the brain or
Yeah, I would just go back to, I mean, it's on my bookshelf behind me, but it's a quote that you'll find in the book of Romans in the Bible in the New Testament, Romans 12:2. And it really just says that if you change the way you think, you'll change the way your life is. And you can change your house and your shoes, you can change your car, you can change your clothes, you can change your job. But if you don't change your mind, you can't change your life. And so, is an invitation for us all. Is there a different way that I can think about the situation? Is there a more positive way I can think about the situation? Is there someone else I can talk to that's going to give me some support? And that relationship's iron sharpened iron, and it changes the way I think and feel. It's really worth having those conversations with ourselves. When you think differently, we can live differently. Is it an overnight process? Maybe not, but it's still a journey worth going on. And so I'd encourage people to engage in that.
Amen. Man, I love that you mentioned Romans 12:2, and you'll see why here in a little bit. But
Okay.
what a conversation, because there's something powerful about just sitting with someone who not only understands the brain on a scientific level, but who's also walked through seasons that break the heart and reshape the soul. Dr. T could have stayed in the clinical world. He was very successful there. He had the credentials, the expertise, the status. But then life handed him something that he didn't ask for. The kind of loss that changes everything. And instead of letting that loss define him, he allowed it to redirect him. He stepped out of the unexpected path into a deeper one marked by purpose, impact, and service. And I think that's one of the biggest takeaways from today, that sometimes the moments that undo us are the very moments that rebuild us. We talk a lot on this podcast about the stories that shape us, obviously, hence the name. And what Dr. T reminded me today is that we don't always get to choose the chapters that come our way. We don't get to rewrite the past, but we do get to decide what we do next. Dr. T also talked about managing the mind, and I absolutely love that, because so often we think our thoughts are in control of our everyday lives. We think that we're stuck in this cycle and that what happened to us is the end of the story. But the brain is trainable. Like he said earlier, you can literally rewrite the way that you think. You can interrupt self-doubt. You can build mental resilience. You can find clarity in the chaos, and you can step out of survival mode and start living again with intention. I think the most encouraging things that he said today is that we can turn our complex science into simple, actionable strategies. And that's the kind of work that changes not just organizations, but people, families, and ultimately lives. And maybe that's where you are today, sifting through the pieces of your story, wondering if the pain served a purpose. But let me remind you of something that Dr. T lives out every single day. Your greatest wound might actually be the doorway to your greatest work. So here's the challenge I'll leave you with today. Start paying attention to the way that you talk to yourself. Start noticing what patterns are repeating that no longer serve you or your life. And start believing, I mean truly start believing, that your mind isn't the enemy, but it's your engine to keep moving forward. And when we start to think that way, when we rise above the noise, the division, and the pressure to choose sides, we often open up to something deeper, something more eternal and ultimately bigger than ourselves. We begin to live not according to the world's patterns, but according to God's designs for our mind, our relationship, and our purpose. So there's a verse that captures this so perfectly, and it's one that I keep coming back to. And it's so funny that Dr. T alluded to this a little bit ago, especially in the moments where I want to find ground in myself and remember how God calls us to think, to live, and to lead. So this week's verse of the week is, what is it, Dr. T?
Is it Romans 12:2?
Romans 12:2.
No
Yes,
way.
sir.
Oh,
And so
wow.
in Romans 12:2, it says, do not conform to the pattern of this world, but be transformed by the renewing of your mind. And then you will be able to test and approve what God's will is, his good, pleasing, and perfect will. Wow. I'm just so blown away that we both thought about that. But what
Yeah, I've just looked up. There are 31,102 verses, and we both came up with exactly the same one. Yeah.
that's
Yeah.
divine right there.
Yeah, that's really cool, isn't it? That's
What's the
quite
percentage of that?
well, because I don't do long division.
Hey, you have a calculator in your pocket though.
1 over let's have a look. That's how testing my iPad skills on the fly. Here we are. So that is 1 over 31,102 multiplied by 100 is, yeah, I mean, it's tiny. It's 0.003% chance. So,
That's divine.
yeah.
Wow.
It's a good verse.
It is a great verse. But I guess what many of you might be wondering is what exactly does it mean to renew our minds? And how does that connect with our brains and the world that we live in today? Well, I'll tell you this. Our brains are the most powerful organ in our body, and it shapes how we think, feel, and act. The brain is constantly being rewired based on our thoughts, beliefs, and experiences. The more we think a particular way, the more our brain reinforces those neurological pathways, meaning it's easier for us to think in the same patterns over and over again. This is where the idea of neuroplasticity comes in. The idea is the brain's ability to change the structure and function based on new learning or new experiences. So when God tells us to be transformed by the renewing of our minds, He's not just talking about changing our thoughts or beliefs at a surface level, but He's talking about life-altering change that affects how we think, how we view others, and how we encourage others around us, as well as engage with the world. This transformation isn't just about personal growth, it's about letting God's truth reshape our brains, our perspectives, and our entire way of life. Now let's take it a step further and look how renewing the mind connects with something that we desperately need in today's world. Being open-minded is so crucial, especially in today's world. So do not conform to the pattern of this world, like Romans 12:2 speaks to. We live in a world where the division seems to be the default. There's constant pressure to conform, whether it be through politics, social issues, or the culture of comparison. People often find themselves at odds with each other, especially when they have differing opinions. Even if you don't agree with someone, people today think that it's easy to shut them out, easy to argue with them, or easy to condemn them. Because we are living in an age where differing beliefs seem to equal division, hate, and unwant. But in Romans 12:2, God calls us to rise above the world's patterns. Instead of getting sucked into the world that thrives on polarization and conflict, we're called to renew our minds with God's truth and perspective. Here's where the mind and the brain science come into play when we talk about being transformed by your mind. To be transformed by the renewing of our minds doesn't just mean changing our opinions, but it means changing how we approach others, how we listen, and how we engage with the world. That transformation involves having an open mind, one that's willing to listen, understand, and engage with those who might not share our views. It's so easy for us to close ourselves off from people who think differently. But God's word challenges us to open up our hearts, our minds, and to listen with compassion, and to be ready to understand before we speak. This doesn't mean we abandon the beliefs, but it does mean we approach others with humility and love. Because in today's world, it's so easy to get tapped into the pattern of division. But when we allow God to renew our minds, we break free from the patterns of hate, judgment, and quick division. We become more open, more understanding, and better able to engage with those around us. The transformation isn't just what we believe, but it's how we treat others. So ultimately, the test is, how are we going to approve what God's will is? Is it good, pleasing, and in perfect will? Or is it demoralizing, causing conflict and hate? Because when our minds are renewed, we gain the ability to discern God's will for our lives and our relationships. So, as I wrap up today, I want to encourage you to focus on God's will, renewing your mind with His Word as it equips you to love others through His will. His will is to love, show grace, and to be a source of peace in a divided world. Because when we renew our minds, we live in a way that reflects His heart for unity, understanding, love, and compassion. What a powerful conversation today with Dr. T, as he reminded us that the mind is not just a battlefield, but it's also a garden. And what we plant in it, truthful, whether it be truth, openness, hope, those will all take root and shape the kind of people we were ultimately meant to become. I hope today's episode challenged you to think deeper, to listen more openly, and to lead with compassion, even when the world tells you to do the complete opposite. Again, I want to thank Dr. T for joining us again today, all the way from Scotland, because he has made history as our first international guest here on the podcast. Dr. T has left a legacy in his space that instills wisdom into your heart. I am so honored to share this episode with our listeners. And next week, we're going to keep the momentum going because I'm sitting down with someone whose story takes us into the world of perseverance, entrepreneurship, and what it means to rebuild everything when everything is stripped away from you. You're not going to want to miss this one. Until then, keep renewing your mind, keep seeking truth, and never forget that your story matters. This has been The Stories That Shape Us. Join us each week for real stories, real growth, and real impact. Thanks for listening, and I'll see you next time.